Well, pork chops. Pork chops. What can you say about pork chops? Everybody loves them. They're savory, they're thick, they're juicy, they're succulent when done properly. I really insist on bone-in pork chops. We'll talk more about that later. What I like to do with my pork chops is saute them, but first I like to make a little bit of a sauce. I saute some red onions, garlic, and of course an extra virgin olive oil, and a little bit of, in my case, a butter substitute, a kind of a healthy margarine, and a little touch of sugar, believe it or not, a little bit of cracked black pepper. I saute all that into a nice sauce, and then I set that aside, put in the pork chops. Anyway, I'll talk more about that later. Okay, pork, the other white meat, you know, the one that actually tastes good. Pork is great, especially if it's nice and fatty and marbled like this pork is. This is some really good fat pork, and I don't even want to talk to you if you are afraid of eating a little fat. It's not going to kill you if you don't eat it all the time. We have something like this, my daughter and me, probably once a month, and we enjoy it. I always get the bone-in pork chops because the bone-in pork chops are the most tender. If you get your pork chops filleted already, it won't be as tender as if you have the bone in. Trust me on that one. Again, you can get this entire recipe on robertomighty.com, where you can also find out about my new album, KiTCHEN Music. I've got my grill hot. I've already oiled the grill. Now I'm going to go ahead and season the meat. Now the thing about pork is that you cannot handle raw pork. So let me just get a fork. I'm going to use this one fork to handle the pork. That rhymed. And I'm going to season it. The typical seasoning here, a little kosher salt, little fresh whole peppercorn, cracked black pepper in a pepper mill. Turn this over. Again, the other side, same thing. Now, I could put a little garlic, and to be honest, I often use garlic powder and onion powder. Yeah, I know, don't write about that either. You know, you don't always have time to do everything. Sometimes you just gotta move. So at any rate, today I'm not gonna do that. Today I'm gonna take this now, which is all seasoned. I've already oiled my grill. I've sprayed canola oil on it. I'm gonna take this now, make sure my grill is hot. It is very hot. Ah, like that sound? I'm going to saute up some crescents or slivers of butternut squash and some kale. Kale is a leafy green vegetable, a cruciferous vegetable, kind of like collard greens. And butternut squash is, well, you know, butternut squash. Again, bright color, orange, good polyphenols, very healthy for us. Good leafy greens. You should be eating this like a couple times, at least once a day, if not more. I know my pan is hot because I could feel it. Also, my oil is running. I'm going to now take my butternut squash and kale and just dump it right in, away from my face. And because there's not too much oil in there, I can flip this. Okay, now we're doing beautifully. Okay, take my spatula. I'm just gonna, look at that, nice grill marks, and it smells great. Now my kale is turned to bright green, my butternut squash to turn to bright orange. I'm now going to add in the apple cider vinegar. Do this away from my face, it might bubble up a bit. Don't you love that sound? I love it. A little smoke. Yeah, man. Woo! But now the thing about squash and kale is that you sometimes want to let it simmer just a bit. So I'm going to take some regular water, add it in there, let that simmer. Meanwhile, take another look at our pork chops. Let's see how they're doing. Using the same pork fork as before, take a peek. As you can see, the pork chop is still red around the outside. That means it's really not done. Some people believe that they can eat pork medium rare. I'm not one of those people. I like my pork to be at least medium. Okay, now while that's all going, I'm going to take my potatoes, which I cooked earlier. As you can see, they're still hot. I'm going to take my potatoes over here now. Some people like to whip their potatoes. Whipping is for weenies. Repeat after me. Whipping is for weenies. We like to get in there with our hands and mash these suckers. Makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you're doing something. I'm going to turn this down a bit. Make sure this isn't burning. Okay? I'm going to let this stuff simmer and cook down. I like my squash to be nice and soft. I do not like chewy squash. It's just, you know, a preference. Okay. The grilled pork chops are still going. Back over here to the mashing. Put your back into it, boys and girls. Get these mashed up to a nice consistency. Then I'm going to add in butter. In my case, I use a kind of a nice healthy margarine. And a touch of Dijon mustard. White wine Dijon mustard from the Dijon region of France, of course. A little bit of kosher salt. More elbow grease. Oh man, smells very good. Now let's take a look and see how our pork is doing. I'm going to use the same pork fork. Take a peek. Beautiful. Oh man, that looks good. Woo! Again, the pork is cooked, so now it's okay to handle it. And turn the grill off. Put these chops on this plate like that. Got some of my potatoes. Now, I like my potatoes kind of lumpy. I like to know that they're real potatoes. Not everyone likes it this way. If you like to whip yours in the food processor, go watch somebody else's show. I like it kind of lumpy so I can know they're real potatoes. Push this pork aside a bit. Put my kind of granulated potatoes on there with Dijon mustard. That really smells good. And now, my butternut squash slivers or crescents. Try to make some sort of cool pattern with the squash. You can get this entire recipe on robertomighty.com along with my album, KiTCHEN Music. Okay, well now I've got it all plated up, and I tried to do it in a kind of artistic way. And now I'm going to add the final touch, and that is applesauce. Now pork and apples is one of the oldest combinations known, and instead of making my own applesauce, the truth is I buy natural, unsweetened applesauce in these little containers, just like this, and I open it up. I do this before my guests arrive. Now, this dish is really complete. We've got pork, grilled pork chops, applesauce, a classic combination, plus butternut squash, mashed potatoes with Dijon mustard, kale with a little bit of apple cider, and a little bit of hot sauce. In my case, I love the Mexican hot sauce on top. Enjoy. See you next time.